There's a house that I spent a good portion of my childhood in, and the house that I, to this day, although no longer living in it, will always call my true home. I have many fond childhood memories in that house, and it's where our family lived the longest. What I'm about to describe are all real events experienced in this house by me and the rest of my family. These are true accounts and are not exaggerated in any way. So let's get down to it. We've always known that house was haunted, not to the point of being insane and deadly like you see in those movies these days, but plenty of unnerving things have happened there. Let me start by telling you a little bit about the house's history. The first thing you should know is that it's very old. It's from the 1800s. It used to be a hotel. When my family bought it, I, being the youngest, was only a little kid. We remodeled that house and even extended it a little. It took a very long time, but eventually that old rickety house from the 1800s got a brand new, modern makeover. However, the things lingering in that house, which we couldn't see, stayed. At first, it started out with smaller things. My older brother would occasionally be falling asleep in his room upstairs, and someone would blow in his ear. He would open his eyes and look, but of course, nobody would be there. We were told by a few different people that a cranky old lady used to live there who would sit out rocking in her rocking chair on the balcony, yelling at people who would walk by. There was one night during which one of my older sisters was sleeping on the couch in the living room and she started hearing a creaking sound. She described it as wood, creaking rhythmically, coming from the spot just outside one of the upstairs windows, which used to be a door that led out to the balcony that no longer exists. One time when I was little, being all adventurous like I was, I took a digital camera up to the furnished attic at night, where it was quiet and pitch black. I made my way in the middle of the room, held up the camera, and started snapping pictures. I could only see what I was taking pictures of when the camera would flash, and then afterwards when I looked at the taken pictures on the digital screen. I eventually saw in one of the pictures I had taken while I was facing a wall, a small, black spot in the middle of the screen. I decided to take another set of pictures, pointing the same way, and saw that the spot was still there, but had grown. To me, it looked like some sort of portal to nothingness, a small void of blackness in the room, something that sucked up the light of the flash and didn't reflect any back. As I took more and more pictures of it, it just got bigger and bigger until it was almost covering the entire camera lens. It was then that it occurred to me that rather than growing, this black mass actually seemed to be getting closer and closer to the camera lens. I don't remember anything past that point. I must have ran downstairs. Things started getting more physical. I was once in the shower when the water suddenly got cold, and I looked back to find that the knob had been turned significantly behind my back. At night, when we were alone, we each began to hear loud footsteps above us in the biggest room on the second floor. You would only ever hear them if you were alone, or were the only one awake. Once they were so heavy, it sounded like there was an elephant or something up there, and the ceiling creaked so loud that I half expected it to cave in on me. My sisters shared that room for a very long time. Eventually one of them moved out, only one remained in it. When she was walking around up there, you could hear her footsteps clearly. The only problem was, I would also hear those footsteps walking around when she wasn't home, sometimes when I was home alone by myself. My mom was awakened one night when my friend was sleeping over, to loud footsteps running up and down the stairs. According to her, it sounded like more than one person and was practically a stampede. She jumped out of bed, angry at us being up so late, causing such a racket, opened her bedroom door into the room where you can see the bottom of the stairs, but there was only dead silence and darkness. Everything was still. She thought that maybe we must have run upstairs and she had just missed us. So, she went up the stairs and opened the door to the room where we were both sleeping in, which was my sister's old room, now vacant after they had both moved out. But to her surprise, we were sound asleep. She thought maybe we were faking it and inspected us closer and realized that no, we were clearly out cold and had been that way for quite a while. She mentioned all of this to us the next day, maybe still wanting to think that it was us, but we of course had no idea what she was talking about. One night, I was just about to fall asleep when I heard the man's voice, right in my face, whisper the word, bang. It pulled me out of my sleep, making my eyes shoot open and look around the dark room to find absolutely nothing. After a minute, still being tired, I brushed it off and closed my eyes again. I started to drift back to sleep when the same voice once again quietly whispered bang in my face. I opened my eyes again to once again find nothing. This happened a total of 3 times before I was finally able to fall asleep. So many things happened in that house, but after so many years of constant activity, you get used to it, and things that used to frighten you begin to simply annoy you. Sometimes, if you were alone and there was a persistent noise being made where no other person was, for example like the squeezing and popping sound of a plastic water bottle in the kitchen, you could simply look in that direction and just say, "Stop it," and sometimes it would just stop. We were eventually able to get the things that we were dwelling in that house out, and the activity, after years of persistence, stopped altogether. As I said earlier, I still consider that house my one and only true home, and I always will. I spent years growing up there as a child with my family and 2 of my close friends, as well as many family friends. Despite the occasional paranormal activity, I have so many good memories of that place. It is where my mind will always wander back to whenever I think home. These events took place when I was about 5 years old in the rural south. You see, back then, my family was always moving from town to town because of my stepfather's work. Among the memories I have of this time include some family secrets that we still don't really talk about. What I am about to relate to you is one such untold secret we would rather forget. The modest white house we had recently moved into was surrounded by 2 large willow trees that blocked out the sun, leaving our backyard shadowed and apart from the rest of the world. My 2 older sisters and I would often swing from their branches and climb their thick trunks, while our mother and stepfather would sit on the porch and contentedly watch us play in the late afternoon. We would ride bikes, swim in the inflatable pool, fly kites, and run on the slip and slide, you name it. We were very active children and never left a beautiful day unfulfilled. Across the street were a few other homes, and the sweet old couple directly across from us would often sit on their own porch and wave and smile at us as they drank lemonade from a large pitcher and sat in old wooden rocking chairs. Our mother often waved cheerfully to them when we were brought outside, and their smiles and sweetness always made the day more pleasant. Until, that is, a few months after moving into the old white home, our mom got the 3 of us together, telling us there was something we needed to talk about as a family. She told us sternly that we were no longer to wave at the sweet elderly couple across the street. She went so far as to tell us not to even look at them, and if we saw them waving at us, we were to come inside and tell her. Honestly speaking, this was an odd request to us. Nothing about the elderly couple seemed threatening or off in any way. Hell, our mother was the one who was always talking about how sweet they were, to be so friendly. So this request baffled us and continued to baffle us for the rest of our stay in this particular home. But we minded and no longer responded to the couple across the street. Soon they had been easily forgotten as we got on with our lives in other homes in other towns. That is until I was 16 years old, having a pleasant dinner out with my sisters and mom, a rare occurrence for sure during this time of our lives. For whatever reason, over our evening meal, the conversation turned to that quiet, old white house and the elderly couple across the street. As soon as the subject had been brought up, my mom's joyful face had darkened. Her eyes fell to her lap, and it took her a moment before actually addressing us. She told us that she had been afraid to talk about the subject all these years, especially while we were still living in that home, afraid of needlessly making us afraid of staying in the quiet house in the shade of the willow trees. At that time, our stepfather had been working at the local Pepsi company, a well-paying job that allowed my mom to stay at home with the three of us while still making a modest living for our family. Apparently, one of his co-workers had actually lived in the house beside the Willow home for nearly 6 years and had only moved out the year before. My stepfather and the man were talking about the neighborhood and the house, when at some point my stepfather mentioned a sweet, elderly couple across the street that liked to sit on their porch in the evening and watch his kids laugh and play. The man looked genuinely puzzled. He said that my stepfather must be joking, just pulling his leg. My stepfather replied, just as perplexed. With a sober face, the co-worker told my stepfather that there was no elderly couple living across the street. Sure, there had once been such occupants in the small home, but they had both died horribly nearly 3 years before from carbon monoxide poisoning. The couple's stove had leaked gas for days before they finally succumbed to the poisoning, and it took longer than that for anyone to find the dead couple. The man knew because he was the one who crossed the street to check on them, only to find the ghastly scene. Therefore, it was he who recommended we leave the house in the shade. What I'm about to tell you happened to me when I was about 12 years old. My mom was out of town for work, and my stepdad was gone doing something for the evening. I was left at home with my two stepsisters, ages 12 and 15. My stepsisters were both extremely promiscuous, and they decided to invite two older guys over, probably aged 20, maybe even older, I don't know. I was very naive at this age, and sheltered by my mom. I knew the guys shouldn't have been in our house, but as naive as I was, I just went on with my regular nightly routine. So I take a shower, put my house coat on, go in my room, and to my surprise, one of the older guys was laying across my bed, smiling. I remember feeling extremely uncomfortable and not knowing how to react. I just quietly said, "Please get out of my room." He laid there smiling for a second or two, and then got up and slowly left. I locked my door and didn't leave my room. My stepsisters used to gang up against me, so I didn't want to tell on them and have them beat me up again. I could hear my sisters running through the house squealing, yelling something about playing naked hide and seek. My stepdad ended up calling to check on us and saying he was on his way home. One of my stepsisters overheard the conversation on the other phone line. They would regularly eavesdrop on my phone calls, and then they told the guys to leave out the back door. I ended up snitching to my mom eventually because my stepdad could tell something was off. Ended up getting in a lot of trouble too for not telling right then, and I didn't understand why. But now, at the age of 24, I understand, and it terrifies me to think of how horrible that night really could have ended for me. I was up late one night watching TV alone in the living room when I was about 12. I heard my dog growling in the kitchen. Sometimes he does that when he sees something in the backyard. A cat, a squirrel, a plastic bag blowing in the wind, the moon, whatever. Anyways, I go to investigate and see him standing at the door with the hair on his back standing way up. Like the way I've ever only seen it when he's about to get into a fight, or wants to. So I creep over and look out. I see nothing. After watching for a minute or two, I figured it was probably a raccoon that's gone by now. So I open the door to let the dog out. He steps out a few feet and stops right in front of me, looking off towards the shed in the back corner of the yard. It's the middle of the night, and only the back porch light is on, which isn't enough to really light up the whole yard. I look off towards the shed, scan around it. Nothing. Then, suddenly, my eyes drift upwards towards the tree that hangs over the shed. There's some dark, undefined shape up in the tree, and the instant my eyes fix on it, it quickly floats up like a wisp of smoke being blown away, and disappears in the backdrop of the night sky. No sound whatsoever, no flapping of wings, not even the rustling of branches. My dog at this point goes mental and starts barking at it. He's still right in front of the door, so I reach forward and grab his collar and yank him inside and book it out of the kitchen. I try to wake my mom up, blabbering about some dark cloud in the tree, but she's fast asleep. To this day, I have no idea what it could have been that I saw. So that's it for today's Halloween special. Thank you so much for watching, and I really hope you enjoyed it. If you did, make sure to leave a like. Until tomorrow, goodbye.